Oh, hey, girlfriends. Welcome back to the Shameless Era Podcast. I am Justine Eno.
And I'm Lindsay Dalen.
We are so happy to be here with you today for another podcast and another wicked guest. So today I have the honor of introducing a beautiful woman that I have followed on social media for 2019. So
wow.
5 or 6 years. And she's been an inspiration not only to me, but to people across the world. So I would like to introduce Meg Garland. And yeah, I'm so excited to just dive into this conversation with you.
Thanks. I'm so excited to be here, you guys.
So excited. So you are on social media all the time. Is this, how many podcasts have you done?
I used to have my own podcast. I used to have two different ones, actually. I've been on, this might be like my sixth or seventh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I know people just love talking to you and listening to you because I think you say what everybody else or the majority of people are thinking and are just way too scared to actually say it themselves. So when people are, scrolling your feed or listening to you, they're like, yes, yes, yes. And they're just so on board for that. So I want to kind of just rewind back to 2018 when I first kind of started talking with you. It was when you were selling Unique.
Yes.
Yeah. She made me fall in love with their makeup. And because you were doing makeup tutorials and I started watching you and I was like, this girl doesn't know how to do her makeup either. Like, this is amazing. So I just followed along with you and learned how to do my makeup. So that's credit to you. But how did you kind of start? So you started with Unique, and then how did your journey transpire kind of to the 2020 year?
Well, I started Unique when I guess I would have been 19, and I was pregnant, 8 months pregnant with my oldest son. And I just needed something because I knew I wanted to stay home with my baby. And so I started selling makeup and doing makeup online. And I was not active on social media before that at all. And that business and doing that definitely got me active on social media. And I did that for 6 years, very, very consistently. And during that, it served me in so many different ways. Obviously, when you get into, I always say that if you're in network marketing, direct sales, anything like that, it's just you're in the business of personal development. So that 6 years, even though I'm not with that company anymore, it served me so much. And it really did, like what you see today on social media with me being very authentic and out of that, it was a long process. It's not like overnight I was like, I'm just going to share my opinion, which it kind of was, but it took 6 years of solid personal development and showing up and allowing myself to be seen, I guess, on social media for a really long time before I ever was comfortable going, I guess, balls to the wall is what you could call it these days, but compared to what it was. And so I showed up for 6 years doing makeup, and that's really what I did. And just kind of, I got into mindset, and that's what my first podcast was on, was a lot of mindset stuff through doing personal development and just sharing my own story and journey. And then in 2020, everything just kind of, well, the whole world flipped upside down, and everything just completely shifted. My perspective on everything, what I wanted out of life. I went from being, I guess you could say, a bit more materialistic and wanting, that perfect Instagram photo to get the Instagram followers and all that kind of stuff, to wanting to homestead and just be a homebody and live a very simple life. And everything just changed. So I went from doing makeup all the time to literally never wearing makeup, and just, it wasn't aligned anymore. I didn't wear it as much. I didn't want to show up and do makeup tutorials. It is the easiest way to describe it, is it just did not align with me anymore at all. And so in 2020, I kind of was in this abyss of I don't know who I am, what I'm doing. I left my previous company of 6 years with, it was honestly my identity. I did it from when I was basically 18 to, yeah, for 6 years. It was my identity. And then I left that, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, what I want. I was like, I'm going to get chickens and sell eggs and bake bread and sell that and get rich making a living doing that. And that never works out. But I in 2020, I think leaving my company gave me a sense of almost like being able to start over, almost like like a fresh start, a fresh slate. And a lot of times when we're in business, we're told not to show up, like to show up authentically, but not too authentically. Because if if you swear too much, if you share your political views, if you share your opinion on things that might be controversial, you're going to ruin your business, you're going to lose customers, you're going to all the things, right? That's what my mindset was for 6 years. And I would have told you for the longest time that I was showing up authentically, and I 100% was not. It was like that surface level authentic where it's not like I was being fake in how I was showing up, but I wasn't being my full self. I wasn't, I wouldn't swear on social media. I would, watch my tongue, and then you'd meet me in person and I have a complete trucker mouth, and it's like, man, something's not adding up. And then, I have smoked weed for however long, and I would never talk about that. But then that's something that I feel like I'm hiding. And then if you met me in person, it's not like I would in person hide it, but there's just that disconnect, right? And when we're not showing up fully authentically, like it affects everything, right? It's like a ripple effect into every aspect of our life. And it can seem very harmless in like, oh, I'm just not going to swear because it's for my business, or I'm not going to do this because it's this. And for some people, like if you don't swear, then don't go swear on social media. But if that's who you are and you're shoving that down, you're like, you are truly doing yourself a disservice. But 2020, it just felt like almost this permission that I needed to maybe show up a little bit more authentically. And just with everything that was happening in the world, I started talking more about my opinions, my, political beliefs, and all of that kind of stuff. And like you said in the beginning, just kind of talking about the things that everybody was thinking but didn't want to say, And so it got to the point where I would show up that way. But what would really make me show up that way was my inbox, like my messages of people being like, thank you for sharing your voice, or I wish I could do that, or I wish I could share my opinion, or whatever that looked like. And it was that kind of motivation to keep doing that, because I could see it was showing people that you can do that and be like totally fine. You can do that and be totally okay. Your business is going to be okay. Your friendships are going to be okay. And if things do happen where maybe you lose a customer or you lose a friendship, there's a reason for that. And in the process, like if you have to dim yourself down in the process of keeping a friendship or keeping a customer, then what's the point? So that was a very long answer that I don't even know if it
No,
answered.
it was so great. During COVID, I didn't watch the news because it, scared me, but I would just watch you. So if I needed like an update on the world, I'd be like, oh, I need to go to Meg's Instagram and like scroll through and be like, oh, okay. And like, you were such a source and such a light for so many people still, but like through those 2-3 years of heaviness, you were such a light. You made people laugh, you made people cry, you made people smile. But being in that minority group during that time, you made it feel safer. So, and I know that for so many people, like when you share what people say to you, that you've affected so many people. So I'm so glad that you made that mind shift. And
I just love the badassery that came out of this new identity that you realized, was more authentically you. And I can relate so hard to your story, girlfriend. And I've spent so many years just like not talking about the fact that I smoke weed, not swearing in front of people. I don't talk about sex, drugs, politics, or religion with my clients as a rule, because that's just the way I've kind of been conditioned and trained. But much like you, the pandemic had an incredible effect on me and kind of threw me into a little bit of an identity crisis. So I would love to know what that was like for you when you realized that, okay, this identity I've had for the last 6 years just isn't really who I am anymore. Like, how did you process letting go of that person you thought you were in order for you to become the person that you are today?
Lots of therapy. I'm just kidding. It's like grieving like the person you were, because when you realize that, maybe you think it's the last couple of years I wasn't being authentic, then you realize it was long before that and long before that. And you just realize that your entire life you are being conditioned by your environment, by the way your parents think, their opinions, their beliefs, then friends in school, then, college, your husband, whatever that looks like. You're always being impacted by the people around you and your environment. And so when you really break down what parts of me are me and what parts of me are something that I took on from other people or other people's opinions of me, or where I felt judged or I had a fear of judgment, so I didn't show up in a certain way, and you realize that who you are, even though it might seem completely harmless and you really genuinely think you're being your full self, when you really break it down, you've taken on a lot of other people's shit, right? And so when you start to break that down, it's hard. It's like emotional, but it's also like you're just trying to figure out who you actually are and what, am I doing this to please somebody else? Am I doing this because I don't want, like, I deal with it all the time still. I had an issue, not an issue, but just something yesterday in a friend group. And it's like, felt like I needed to say something and I didn't. And it's like, okay, but why didn't I do that? And every time I do that, I am doing myself a disservice to make somebody else comfortable. How many other times have I done that in my life? Like it's so many times. And so I don't know, it's hard, but honestly, therapy, and it took me a long time to get to that point of actually going to therapy, because I'm very guilty of being like, I'm okay. Like I in the moment, if I'm dealing with something, I can brush things off very quickly, shove it down and move on. And obviously that's not healthy. But I think it's like a strength, and it's like, no, let's not do that. And I've done that my entire life. And so going to therapy was huge, like just talking it out with somebody. And it's all things I kept saying, this isn't new to me. It's not new stuff. I know these things. I've been doing personal development for so long, but when you're just learning to break down things that you've carried for a really, really long time, and it's made you into who you are, you're just getting to know yourself again, which is a whole journey of every kind of emotion, I think.
So in your journey of finding this shamelessness, how did Casey respond to it? Just like, so you don't post, I mean, you post great things about him and he seems like a wonderful husband. But he seems like a very quiet person, just like quiet and kind of reserved. And you seem to. So I was curious, like when you're going through that shift and you're getting really vocal about your opinions and your views, which you could say would be controversial at the time. How did you guys manage that in your relationship together?
So it's funny because we're opposites, but he's been like a huge, honestly, inspiration for me when it comes to showing up authentically. He's a very quiet, reserved person. He's not on social media. Like, he has Facebook, but he's not on it. He does not understand, like, me having 122,000 followers. He's like, bleh. Like, what? Like, he's all for it, but it's just not his thing at all. And so he's very reserved in that sense, but he's also very, very authentic, as in he does not care what people think, in a good way. And he will always speak his mind. He will speak it regardless of if he thinks somebody won't like him. And he's always had that. And that's something that has honestly, it's just something I look up to in him, and something I've never had, because I've always been such a people pleaser. Even though I've always been a rebellious type of person my entire life, I've always had to learn the hard way. Like, you tell me not to do something, I'm going to go do it just to make sure you're right. And then we'll circle back. But I'm a rebellious person, but I've always been a people pleaser. And I've always really wanted to fit into groups and crowds, and never did, but always wanted to. And then, just meeting my husband, it was very, at times it would make me uncomfortable. I'd be like, don't say that, or don't, just keep that to yourself, when, like, now I'm all for it and I'm the same type of way. But he's very much someone that I still look up to when it comes to being authentic. I love him.
I love watching, like, when you make a post about the two of you or something he's done. I'm just like, I've never met him in person, but he has the kindest energy. Like you can just feel his energy through a photo. You're like, oh, he's like a giant teddy bear.
He is. He's
So
like
I just like,
the tough guy exterior, but he's the teddy bear inside for like me and the kids. And it's just, yeah, I love it.
absolute beautiful pairing. Especially obviously as you were like rediscovering yourself. I'm glad that you had that support, because we don't always get that support when we're trying to change ourselves.
Sometimes
right?
people don't understand growth, and it's just so personal that like you can't expect people to understand. But when you make that commitment to yourself and you make that decision, I just can only imagine how empowering that's been for you over the last 4 years of just becoming the person that you are today and feeling so authentic every single day. And one of the things we're dying to ask you is, how do you deal with the haters? How do you deal with the people that just don't understand the growth that you've done, and they feel like they have a right and space to just like to hate?
I was scrolling your Instagram yesterday just to get some thoughts and stuff, and I stumbled upon some of your hate stuff you shared, and I'm like, God, that's Eve. Like, where do people even get these words and string them together? But you have such a great way of laughing it off or making a reel about them. So this is a question for sure that is like starred for us.
Humor definitely helps, like a sense of humor. I don't know how people, I can't, I can talk to a lot of, like, I can talk to anybody. I can hold a conversation, but if you don't have a sense of humor, I don't know how you go through life. I really don't. But while I do, I can make light of it really easy. I can make the jokes and all of that stuff. It's not like it doesn't get to me. And I don't ever want people to think that. I honestly do not get as much hate as people might think, especially now.
Oh,
I don't know.
that's a first. We're still recording.
It's not us.
Oh, hi again.
So sorry.
That's
No
okay.
worries.
That's living by Rocky Mountain House. That's what you get.
No, someone just tried to FaceTime me and I don't know how that went through because okay, whatever. Sorry guys.
Oh, all good. We're still
We're
rolling.
good.
So you don't get as much hate as you used to,
Yes.
like during the pandemic, obviously. Which yes, I assumed it's died down a little, but through the pandemic, like you were getting like, I'm assuming just as much hate as love.
Honestly, no, I got way more love than I ever did hate. And the hate was honestly, it wasn't a lot of like random like bots. It would be like people that I actually knew that, and more in the beginning when I first spoke out, because again, they were so used to a certain version of me. And then when I stopped showing up as that version of me and the people pleasing and all of that, it was just not the perception of me that they had in their mind, right? And sometimes that's the problem with social media in general, is people just get an idea of who somebody is, and then the second that they say something or whatever that's out of the perception that they've built of them, they are just genuinely mad. And so the way I dealt with it was, and depending on the person and the conversation, some of them I don't even interact. I would just immediately block. Like if you go immediately to like insult and just being rude, like I'm not even going to entertain that. But if you're somebody that's trying to have a conversation or a debate, but I can just tell you're not great with like communicating it, maybe like I'll go back and forth, no problem. But for the most part, I try not to entertain it. And I always just come back to like, I know my own heart. So at the end of the day, if somebody has a certain perception of me or they misjudge me in whatever way because they don't like something that I've said or posted or something that I believe, I have no control over that. I've learned that it doesn't matter how you show up, whether you are people pleasing or not, people are still going to get this perception of you in their head that isn't true. Like it's not a full reality. And you're going to disappoint people no matter what version of you that you show up as. And so you might as well be that authentic version of you. And you're going to piss people off along the way. It's just the name of the game. And what it comes down to again is, can I sleep good at night? Like, am I actually hurting anybody? Am I doing anything wrong? Like, and the answer is no, I'm not. So that's what it comes down to. But there are definitely, and there's ones that I can just brush off. And then there's comments or people that it just, for some reason, hits you and it throws my entire day off. It's like I get a full body reaction. Like I'll be reading a comment maybe, and it's like I start sweating, I'm shaking, and it's like I can tell it's actually causing a reaction to me. And those times are always where I know I personally need to learn something. I'm like, they're clearly triggering me in some way. Like maybe there's truth to what they're saying. Maybe I believe what they're saying about me, even if it's not true. Maybe, lots of things. So a lot of it is, okay, can I learn from this? Maybe there's truth to what they're saying. If there's not, at the end of the day, I know my heart, move on and try to laugh about it.
Random, but what's the most ridiculous thing somebody has said to you? Like where you looked at it and you were just like, you've got to be fucking kidding me. Like, where does somebody get something like this? Is there one that stands out?
Yeah, for sure. I know which one it is. And I have a reel on it. It was somebody who used to follow me, and she's like an actual person in Alberta, like a homesteader. Like it's not a troll. People think these are trolls that message me. I'm like, no, these are real people that I know a lot of you guys follow. And I did a grocery haul, and I went to the grocery store and I was showing what I got from the grocery store. And I thought I was really proud of it. Like I thought it was like a good grocery haul. Like it's all Whole Foods and
It was
shit like that.
Yeah.
And she went off on me and was like, you are, I can't even remember the comments, but was like, packaged garlic? You got packaged garlic? And I was like, that's the hill you're going to die on. And just went off like saying that she called me lots of names, that I'm like misleading people and that all these things. And I was like it was actually psychotic. And so I was like, okay. So there's actually been worse than that, but that was one because I just knew that she was a quote unquote like normal person, and it just completely took me by surprise. And I'm like, people actually think this way and talk to people like this. Like it just blows my mind.
Well, then you can wonder like what's going on in their day that like they decided to dedicate the time and energy to, I'm going to tear this chick apart right now.
So there's something like I said, I was scrolling your Instagram, not that I've seen everything, but refreshing my memory. And something that popped into my head that Linz and I have talked about quite a bit on the podcast is duality. And I was like, oh, this is Megan. And the reason is because it was one of your reels, but it was like, I homestead, but I buy from the grocery store. I do this, but I also do that. And I think there's so much power in that because there's these boxes, right? So it's like, I'm a homesteader. So that means you have to do this, 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 and this, and this to be in that box. But it's like, what if you don't just fit in that one box? Like, what if you want to be in two boxes at the same time? Like, is that not allowed? And you do that so eloquently and so well. So chickens, donkeys, what else do we have for animals? Dogs.
Goats. I think we have a bunny. And I think that's it right now. Yeah.
But you made that complete switch on your own. Like you taught yourself everything in homesteading, which is crazy to just be like, I'm a self-made farmer. I love that. During that process and like, how did you decide what you wanted to keep in that duality? Like when you're becoming the homesteader, how did you find that balance in your family life? And again, too, like I know your oldest still goes to school, right?
We homeschool him now. Yeah.
But he used to, right? So it's like you have this duality of mixing both versions, I guess, of how people expect us to live. How did you find that balance?
I feel like the last year I found that balance because when I started showing up and started homesteading and kind of talking more about like the freedom stuff and all of that, I honestly just put myself in a whole other box. It was like now I went into trying to appeal to that community and it was just a whole other thing. And so I jumped right into that. And honestly, I didn't have a lot of duality in the beginning. It was like, okay, I need to make everything from scratch. I need to grow everything. I need to buy everything from local farmers. And it was like, I would feel almost guilt and shame going to the grocery store or doing anything like that because of honestly a lot of the content I was consuming as well, and the accounts that I was following that were saying those things that, you shouldn't go to the grocery store and you shouldn't do this and blah, blah, blah. And so it actually took me a while to find the balance, I guess, between it's never going to be complete balance, harmony, whatever, however you want to kind of duality, whatever, but
integration. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a hard one because again, you kind of have to quiet the noise of everything online. There's opinions everywhere of how to do this, how to homestead, how to whatever. And I got really like caught up in that. And so, like I said, I would feel almost guilt and shame not getting everything local or doing certain things. And so the last year I've had to really, like I said, quiet the noise and figure out, like, what am I actually comfortable with? You know what I mean? So a lot of people are like one end of the spectrum. Most people are in the middle, but I feel like they feel like they have to be one end of the spectrum. And so there's lots of things. Like, I am very aware of the, products that we have in our home and the ingredients that we use, but I still use self tanner all year long, like I still get my hair done. There's people that, won't step foot in a hair salon because of the chemicals. And I'm like, no, I'm good. Like, there's, we grow as much food as we can ourselves. We buy, raise as much meat as we can. But if we have to go to Costco or the grocery store for stuff, we're going to do that. And we're going to be okay with it. Like, there's balance in everything, with homeschooling, we homeschool. But if my son was to ever turn around and be like, I want to go to public school, like 100%, like I'm going to entertain that. I'm not stuck in my ways. And I feel like when I made that pivot in my life, everything kind of shifted. It was like I said, I just put myself in another box and just went like right into that thing instead of, and again, finding my identity in other things and then appealing to a whole other audience. And it's a whole journey, really finding your authentic self. It really is. And even during that, I thought I was being authentic. And now, a couple years later, I'm like looking back, no, I really wasn't. It's a journey. So I was better than I was before, but still we're always, I don't know. The duality of it is hard because that's actually an area that has caused a lot of issues on my Instagram. The most hate I get, which is funny, is from like the crunchy community and the freedom community, like the people that follow me, like it's and follow me because they actually enjoy my content and my beliefs and all of that stuff, because again, they get a perception in their head of who I am, and when I do anything outside of that, it pisses them off. And I had to take accountability in parts of that because, I was showing up and almost feeding into the, we have to be fully non-toxic. We have to be like blah, blah, blah. And it's almost a little bit of fear porn in a sense, right? It's very, I don't know. It's not realistic in the world that we live in. And so, and it causes more stress than it does good. And I personally learned that the hard way. And the last year has been me, like, it literally took a toll on my physical health of being so stressed out about what I was doing and what I was consuming and the things around me. And so the duality and the balance is really hard. And that's something that has been a big struggle for me. But I can confidently say now, like, I'm good with finding the balance and being okay with, if we eat something or use a certain product, I'm not literally feeling like I'm killing myself. It was actually a complete mind fuck for me.
That leads me like right into a question. So good segue. I was reading your last reintroduction of yourself on your Instagram, and you used the term retired freedom fighter. And I was like, okay, I would like to ask her about that. But I feel like you sort of just answered it, right? Of like how much it was taking a toll on your body. So obviously you're still a freedom fighter. You're still going to fight for your freedoms, your families, and everyone else's who wants to join with you. But is that where the retired part comes of like, you're done fighting other people's fights, essentially? Like, it's too much on you?
Essentially, like, we are not made to consume the content and the amount of content that we do. And with being somebody that, I don't know another word to describe it other than like reported on everything that happened for like 3-4 years straight. 3 years straight, it takes a toll. Like, I had to consume a lot to then put out what I did. Like, I had to consume way more than what you saw me put on my stories or in reels or in highlights. And that takes a toll on your health, like 100%. And I felt that, like, my mental health, my physical health, like, I started breaking out, I started gaining weight, was living in like chronic fight or flight. It was just not good. And so, I can't remember your question
No,
to
the
that.
retired freedom fighting. I mean,
Yeah.
I get it as well. Like, I mean, if you go down a rabbit hole, right? We'll talk about the rabbit holes briefly because there's so many.
Yeah.
And they lead to another one and another one and another one. And as much as they may be valid, in my opinion, I'm like, can I do anything about it?
Right.
Yeah.
That's like my number one question. And if I can't do anything about it, I gotta let it go, because I can't sit in my environment all day and like worry about like Jeffrey Epstein, because like but it's so out of my control at
Exactly.
that point. And I wish it wasn't, but it is. And I'm like, if it's gonna ruin me, like, is it worth it? Right. And I feel like that's exactly what you just said. Like, you've shared so much. I have learned so much from your content. But I can only imagine, for one thing I see, you've seen and had to research them before you post them. And then like, that's dark and that's heavy. Like,
Yeah.
the shit's dark, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's light and bright stuff you're sharing. It's like dark and awful things about the world. So then to have to carry that into your day is, yeah, I don't blame you for being retired.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, I've had people say like, oh, don't get complacent. Like, don't take your foot off the pedal. I'm like, if anything, I am the least complacent that I've ever been. When I'm sharing all that stuff, like, yes, I'm sharing it. And you could say like, potentially helped wake lots of people up, which is awesome. But I also just took them on the same journey as me, as spiraling, going down rabbit holes, like all of that. And there's a way to help people become aware of what's happening in the world. Like I always say, knowledge is power, but like, you just can't live there. And if it's consuming you and taking over all the things, and you're living, like I always say, if you're living in a state of fear, like you're fearful, like you've gone too far. And that's where I was for a really long time, fearful of, all the things. And I, back in 2020, where my mindset was, like, I actually couldn't even envision 2024, like actually picture us being there, because I just literally thought the world was going to end. And now it's like, the world has been corrupt for how long?
Forever.
A long time, a really long time.
Yeah.
And are we okay right now? Yeah, we are. And there's always going to be evil in the world. There's always going to be stuff going on. But again, going back to what you said, is like, you can only control what you can control, period. Like, you can't, it's a solutions based mindset. If you can't do anything about it, like you said, move on. Because if it's consuming you, you're doing yourself a disservice, and you're quote unquote letting them win. Every time that you're fearful, you're living in fear, you're spiraling, you're not going out and actually living your life. That's exactly what they want. And that is exactly where they want you. And yeah, I honestly stayed stagnant for so long because I was just so consumed by all of it. And it's like, I felt like I needed to know everything to be quote unquote prepared or whatever. And I've learned to just let it all go, almost surrendering to it all, and just coming back to, like, I truly believe the way we change the world is one happy home at a time. And that is all we can control, is what we do within the four walls of our home, how we raise our children, the future generation, how we show up in the world, how we treat others, all of those things, those are things that we can control. Everything else, like, we can't. Doesn't matter how many times we talk about it. It doesn't matter how many, videos you do, or podcasts you do, or people you talk to or interview. It's not going to actually change their behavior and what they are doing. Right. And we can stand up for what's right. We can do all of those things. And, if they're trying to pass certain laws that we don't agree with, like, there's absolutely times and places where we can stand up and do those things. But for the most part, the power really is in what we're doing on our day-to-day life. Right. And if we're actually living life, and I don't want to be 60, 70 and look back, and all the things that I thought were going to happen didn't happen. And I did nothing because I thought that the world was going to end. Like, time's going to pass anyways. And like I said, it's been like this for how long, and life has gone on. Like, so yeah.
Gosh, girlfriend, I can only imagine the like mental, spiritual, and emotional journey you've been on over the last few years of, like, in 2020, researching all of this news and what's happening in the world. Like, to internalize all of that would be, I can imagine how that would affect you physiologically. And then to also see your social media following growing so fast, and having all this support, like that crazy dopamine hit in conjunction with the just scary, negative energy and vibes that you were like sharing with the world. Like what a kind of mind fuck that would have been. And then to actually just settle into this space of surrender. I think that's so cool. Like just what an incredible journey to now be at this space where you're just good with it all, you know, like yourself, you're good with your life, your family, you're at peace, it sounds like. And so how does
Fair
that
enough.
feel to just be in that space and know that you're living your life in a more kind of intentional and deliberate way?
I I can't tell you how good it feels. This is something that I've gone through in therapy. Is I didn't realize how out of control I felt my entire life and how chaotic that, like, I very much have ADHD, all of those things. My mom's always said I'm little on the spectrum, like those types of things. And I've just felt so out of control my entire life, and taking control of all of that has felt so rewarding. Like there's no comparison. And when we spend our lives, that's where anxiety comes from. That's where depression comes from. When we're worrying about things that we cannot control, that have already happened, that we think are going to happen. Like I lived there for so long, and it got to the point where, because of going through all of those things and my perspective changing so much, my world view changing so much, I actually had to like check in with myself to make sure I was um being responsible with how I show up with such a large audience, as I like kept seeing it grow. Because in the quote unquote freedom community, even the homesteading community, all of that, the crunchy community, there's a lot of clickbaity stuff. There's a lot of trends you can hop on. There's a lot of things that you can do to quote unquote like grow your account or get more views and all of those things. And I had to make sure, like, am I again trying to appeal to a different audience? Am I trying to get a rise out of people? Am I sharing content that is actually serving people? Or again, am I sending them in a spiral down a rabbit hole? Because that's what I was doing. And so as my account grew, I just felt this kind of sense of responsibility to myself, but also to my audience as well. And so in both ways, and it's why I feel, and you'll see, like, if you go scroll through my page, like, I changed so much. Like what I talk, I'm laughing because I've been posting so much about golf the last couple of weeks. I'm like, people are probably like, fuck, here's her new thing. Golf. It does show my ADHD pretty good. But you can just see, like, it's because I do stay true to myself. And it might seem like I'm fluctuating or whatever, but it's like, if something isn't aligned, if something is not serving me or serving others, like, I'm not gonna stick with it or stay with that vibe. Or like, I just see so many people, especially in the freedom community, their pages are still exactly what they were in 2020, just
Wow.
talking about fear porn and everything that's happening in the world and all the stuff. And I'm like, what is that actually doing? Like, what is it actually doing? And I know some people don't like the shift that I don't talk about all the things happening in the world. Sometimes I will. Like, if it's something I actually want to talk about, I will, but I don't feel obligated to share everything that's happening in the world. I don't feel obligated to go down every single rabbit hole because I feel like I need to know what's happening. So it's just, it feels so good. It's like, I'm going to do basically what I want if it feels right for me, and that's it. Like, yeah.
I think that's like a huge part of being authentic, is that you're forever changing, because if we're good humans, we're constantly growing, right? Like we're never done growing. So your authenticity should be changing if you're growing, because you're going to be, changing your opinions, growing your opinions and your views. So that authenticity is going to change. I did a one-on-one coaching with you. I don't know if you remember. And we talked about, that was what we talked about, was authenticity. And I remember you saying to me, you're like, Justine, just don't post, because people will feel that. Like if you are doing something that you don't align with, or you're whatever, you're just posting to post, like people feel that. And you said to me that your Instagram following grew exponentially the second you let go of the shit. Like the second you were just like, here I am, I'm gonna be outside smoking a joint, watering my tomatoes.
My dead tomatoes.
Yeah, or whatever it is. And so how did that feel? Was that like really rewarding for you to like, when you fully stepped into that authenticity? And then of course you lost followers, but you also gained so many more in your community that you knew really wanted to be there for the real you, that weren't
Yeah.
just following you to follow you. How rewarding did that feel?
Very. It's like, as bad as it sounds, it's almost like that permission that I needed. It's like sometimes when we step out and we are a certain version of ourselves, or we are more authentic, we are almost waiting for not the permission, maybe like the reassurance of like, yes, that was the right thing, or that was the right step, or people see you for how you want them to see you. Not that we can control how everyone perceives us. That's not it at all. But it was definitely like that reminder that I needed of, okay, this is the right step. This is what I need to do. And yeah, I did lose some followers, but like you said, it opened up space for all the beautiful people that I found in the last couple of years that have, like, the friendships that I have, the business partnerships that I have, like the things that I have in my life today are all people that not all, but majority of them are people that I met in the last couple of years because of the way that I showed up. And I never would have connected with them. I never would have met them if I had just stayed where I was. And if I stayed where I was and kept appealing to the people that I was trying to appeal to, they didn't even like the real me. Like, they didn't even like the real me. And I would have spent however long doing that. And I just let it go. And now and it's so refreshing knowing that whoever I meet, I literally don't hide. I have nothing to hide. I'm not waiting for them to find something out about me, as long as I know they've seen my Instagram. No, I'm just kidding. But I'm not waiting for them to find out that I smoke weed or that I swear or whatever. Like when I have people ask me to come on a podcast, I'm not, worried that they're not going to know my beliefs, or that if I say something, it's not what they thought I might be, because I just am who I am and I show up as that version of myself. And when it comes to authenticity, I always say, not everybody, like, the way that I show up authentically does not mean that's how everybody else has to show up. Like sharing your political views or sharing that you smoke weed. Like, if you smoke weed, but you have no desire to share that or to show up online in a certain way, as long as you're doing that because that's your choice and you're not doing it because you're worried about what somebody else might think or whatever, which usually that's what it is. But if it's just genuinely because that's not who you are, you're not that type of person that just flaunts that kind of stuff, then by all means don't do it. But that is who I am. So I do. And so, being authentic is not just, sharing your political views online, because that's not who everybody is. And that's one thing that I've come to learn, is being authentic doesn't mean that everybody gets access to every single part of you and every single aspect of you, right? I used to think being authentic would, for example, if I'm sitting down with family and politics gets brought up and I don't share my true, honest belief and like pipe in on the conversation, then I'm not being authentic. Being authentic is me deciding and knowing that that person can't actually have a civil conversation with me, and my energy's like, we're not going there.
Yeah.
And it's not because I don't want to have confrontation. It's not because I don't want him to know what I think or anything like that. It's because I'm being true to myself, and I know that's not going to serve me. But if it's somebody sitting across that could have a civil conversation with me and I knew it wouldn't end up in an argument and just making things worse, then I would. But you get to decide what's authentic to you, but you have to check in with, like, is it because I'm appealing to somebody else, or is it because this is just who I am and that's actually what I want to do?
Well, I think that's such a powerful point, in that, like, we have the power to choose what we do and don't share with people. And that doesn't mean that we're not authentic. Just because I have an opinion doesn't mean I owe it to the world. Just because I have social media doesn't mean I owe it to the world to show my shittiest, hardest moments. I deliberately choose to show up a certain way. And part of that is, I don't want to talk about politics because it's exhausting to me. So it's just like, I just don't talk about politics. But I think it's so cool that you have such a grip on the fact that, you share what you want to share, you protect what is private to you, and you choose to engage or not engage based on wherever you're at in that moment. And keep it going, girlfriend, because that's so inspiring. And I think more women need to sit at the table with women like yourself, where it's just, you're clearly so comfortable in your skin and with just who you are. And like you said, your heart. And what it's doing in your life. And so I just am so excited for you to continue on this journey. And you mentioned some partnerships. So I would love for you to share something that you're working on that you're excited about. Like, what can people expect from you moving forward?
Oh man, I'm working on lots of things. No, one of the partnerships that has come out of the last couple of years is Trailblazer Academy. So we started, we started homeschooling, but through, social media, I did. So I actually would it be 2 years ago? Yeah, 2 years ago in September, I did, I had a big potluck at my house. So I invited, I just opened it up to all my followers, which probably wasn't the smartest idea to invite people to my house.
From PayPal for that. Did you ever get your money for the setup for sovereignty? You never did.
No, I did. Sorry, I did get mine, but it took 8 months total, I think. I had to, yeah, it was bad.
Oh,
Okay, sorry, keep going. So setup for sovereignty is where you met your
No, that was a different event. That event came from my potluck. So I just had a potluck at my house and I just invited people, and because it was, again, the freedom community, people were very isolated. They'd lost family, friends, and people were just really craving like-minded connections. And so I was like, everybody come to my house. We had like 100 people at my house for a fire and a potluck. It was so much fun, but there were so many connections that were made. And so I met two people there, and their names are Annabelle and Lindsay, and we just stayed friends since. And so Annabelle's a public school, or was a public school teacher. She was let go during the pandemic for not getting vaccinated. And then Lindsay is a homeschooling mom, and she's homeschooled ever, like, I don't think her son ever went to school. I think he went for kindergarten, literally for her to socialize him. That was literally it. But and that's it. And so we basically saw a need in the community, and we were like, so many people want to homeschool, but they either don't want to teach, like they don't want to be the one teaching their kids. They don't, they can't afford to stay home. Like they have a job, they need to go to work. Maybe they want to homeschool, but they don't want to do it all the time. Like they need support or whatever that looks like. And so we just saw a need in our community of people that wanted that homeschooling environment, but maybe didn't want to do it all on their own or completely on their own, whatever that looked like. And so, and also teachers wanting to get out of the public school system but still finding a space to be able to do what they love, working with kids, and get paid to do so. And so we created Trailblazer Academy, which is basically an advanced homeschool co-op. We don't call it a school because we don't want to be government funded or affiliated in any way whatsoever. And so we're completely parent-led. Like we fund everything. And we basically have, so right now in Sylvan Lake, we are opening basically a farm school. So it's on a farm. We found an amazing like-minded family that wanted their space.
She came to Mexico for Mallory's wedding.
Oh,
She's one of Mallory's really good friends, but she is a gem human being. So yeah,
amazing. Yeah. And her parents live on there too, and they're also amazing. And they see our vision and they are so on board. And so we just have a space where kids, like parents, can actually drop their kids off and they can come, quote unquote, to school for the day on the farm, and they get to learn in a homeschooling environment. They get to learn actual life skills. They don't get all the unnecessary fluff. They get, the smaller class sizes. So they're getting that one-on-one. They're actually able to learn in an environment that is the way kids are meant to learn, which is not sitting in a desk for 6 hours. So yeah, and then we also, on top of that, we do, so that's kind of our consistent location, because in the homeschooling community, there's lots of stuff for people to do and events and activities that people can join, but it's never consistent. It's never in the same place where people can just drop their kids off. It's something that the parents have to attend with their kids, all that kind of stuff. And so again, we just saw the need for that within the community. And so that's our consistent location where people can drop their kids off at, and where we can host certain events and stuff, or lessons, activities. But then we also do almost like field trips and events throughout central Alberta. So we'll go do tours of, the honey farm, or we just did the cheese farm in Sylvan and places like that. And so all homeschooling families can kind of attend. And then we are also now expanding online. So we plan to do online tutoring. People can purchase online curriculums and things like that. So that's my biggest project right now, for sure.
How do people, there's a wait list, yes? I'm assuming. Yeah, I knew there was but how do people get on the wait list, or just to find out more information about it? Can you just share that so that they know? Because if I was interested still. I'd be on that wait list.
Yeah, our website's under construction right now. That's typically where I would send people, but just our Instagram or our Facebook. So just Trailblazer Academy. On Instagram, it's trailblazer.academy.ab. And then registration for September for Sylvan will be opening pretty soon. And then we'll also have some summer activities going on as well. And we'll have stuff all year long. So even though out of the school year, we'll have stuff going on during the summer too.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
I'm really proud of you for doing that and the team you have behind you. And I don't know the other two ladies, but like I said, I know Renee and her family, and there isn't a better family that you guys could have aligned with for this kind of goal. Salt of the earth people. So I can't, like, it's gonna just grow exponentially. It's gonna be absolutely amazing. So
well, it goes back to what we talked about the solutions, right? It's just like, where can I focus my energy and my time? Like, instead of me complaining about the public school system and listening to other people complain about it, like, let's make a solution instead. And it just goes back to that. It's like, and I have people message me, oh, you should bring a Trailblazer to here, and we want one where we are. And I'm like, you do it, like, open one. We all need to create the solution. And our plan is to have Trailblazers in as many communities as possible. But it's just that reminder of, like, anybody can start anything. Like, that is how we make a difference and change this world, is by creating solutions outside of the systems that are so broken. So
love that. Take the first step, right?
Absolutely.
yeah.
Day one, right?
Yeah, exactly. All right. I think we're gonna wrap it up. Do you have anything that we didn't touch on that you would like to speak to before we wrap it up?
I don't think so.
No, okay. I do have a question just because I'm curious and you haven't updated. How is your youngest hair growing back?
Oh, I saw that on your Instagram this morning too.
Because I'm like that. She is like a little you, and I can't wait. Like, she's gonna move mountains, that girl, one day. But how's your hair?
It's coming along. She didn't do, because she cut it twice. She cut it into a mullet, and then she took Casey's buzzer and buzzed like the front. If she didn't do the front, I think it would look much better. It still looks like a mullet. And we're getting there. But we cut Owen's mullet, so now it doesn't look like, because when Owen had a mullet and then she had a mullet next to him, it looked like we purposely gave her one. And we had people at their Muay Thai, some parents be like, yeah, we thought you did give it to her on purpose. I'm like, no. So now that he's got a normal haircut, it just looks like she cut her own hair. So
it blew my mind though, because as soon as she did that and you posted it, I was like, oh my gosh, she looks so much like your boys. I've never obviously they're all yours, but I was like, whoa, I thought she was your second actually. And I was like, oh no, that's her. So, but good. I'm happy the kids are well. I'm happy Casey's doing well. You're doing well. I'm happy that you're golfing and killing the score. And honestly, this was a bucket list thing for me to even just have these conversations with you. I've followed you for so long. I've admired you for just as long. And thank you for taking the time to be with us today and to share. And yeah, it means a lot. So I'm going to turn it back over to you. As I mentioned, we usually close out with a quote or just some words that you live by or some advice. So I'm going to turn it back over to you.
What I think, honestly, the one I have tattooed on my wrist, which is "This too shall pass." And the joke is, it actually says "This too shall pass," because the P and the ass on pass are stuff. I got it when I was like 16 in a basement, so it's like, it's not great, but it was my first tattoo, and the reminder, like, it's something that I remind myself often, is "This too shall pass," because I am so guilty of getting stuck in moments, spiraling, fear. Like, this is where therapy has helped me, but like what's the word I'm looking for? The thought, oh my gosh, the thoughts where, like, I'm thinking of the worst case scenario, like the worst thing's gonna happen. And it's a reminder, with chaos in the world, like all the things, like with anything in life, like this too shall pass. And it goes back to what I said earlier, which is another one of my favorites, which is, you can only control what you can control. Like, it's going back to the surrender. like, yeah, we all need that reminder.
I'm going into surrender too.
Yeah,
I'm just like,
Justine just said it
let's
to me
just
the other
surrender,
day. She's
yeah.
like, I'm in surrender mode these
Fuck it,
days.
just gonna
So-
surrender. It is what it is. I don't know. Yeah, I'll wake
You
up.
have to. You have to. We can't, no matter how much we try to control, even the things that we can control, we still try to control an outcome sometimes with those things. And we just can't. You do have to surrender. It just is what it is. You can still, again, have control in how you show up and all that stuff, but it's the surrender of the outcome of,
Yeah.
I'll be
Nah.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Again, it was our pleasure to have you here.
Such a pleasure.
And yeah, we can't wait to see all of the things that are gonna come for 2024 for you and lasers and all the other things that are coming. So thank you.
thank you so much, you guys.
Thank you so much for your time today, girlfriend. Honestly, that was such a pleasure. I think a lot of our listeners have learned a lot. So
Good. I'm glad. Thank you.
thanks, girlfriend.